Hi, Mike from Mike's Carburetor Parts here. This video is about putting back together the BBD two-barrel carburetor. And we'll get started here in just a second. Hey, be sure to visit our website, mikescarb.com, where we have many hard-to-find carburetor parts, fuel injectors, and manuals. So here we go. We put this back together. First, we'll put the throttle body on. Obviously, we're going to put the gasket on, make sure the gasket fits, the holes line up. Now the two long screws we can't put in yet because the top has to go on, top and bowl and throttle body goes all together with those two long screws, so we put them on a little later. Keep your screws grouped together so you don't have to go hunting for them like I just did. That's the main jet. There's two of them. Now these are longer jets, BBDs. Most of them use the shorter standard Carter jets. These longer jets at this time are not available. If you absolutely have to change the size, you can solder them shut and re-drill them. That's what we do. Not the best way, but it is a way. Oh, and by the way, these jets do not use gaskets on them. Most jets don't. I always recommend squirting spray carburetor cleaner through all the small passages. Make sure they go through, the ones that are supposed to go through anyway. Um, Especially the main discharge. So the main discharge on this goes from the accelerated pump well over to the main discharge hole. Very important that you get all those passages cleared out, especially the smaller ones. Also try blowing air through them. Wear your goggles. I've sprayed that stuff in my eyes before. It goes splattering on you. Now this particular Venturi comes in two pieces, and there is a gasket between them, so be sure to get the gasket on there. Before we put the Venturi on, let's be sure and get the small check ball and put it in the main discharge. That's the hole in the right at the point. And now we'll put the Venturi on, two-piece Venturi. Don't forget it has a gasket, two gaskets on it. Okay, we'll put the spring in there for the power piston. We're going to put the metering rod assembly in there. Notice how the rod hooks onto the assembly. Carefully line up the rods into the into the main jets. Now they will fit very loose. They're not supposed to plug the jet completely. If they did, you wouldn't get any fuel. All they do is cut down on how much fuel goes through. So you got to line up the metering rods and the power piston at the same time. Be gentle. Those are very small, skinny rods. They'll bend easy. I don't believe you can buy them anywhere. You got to get it so that it'll come up and down real smooth. If it binds at all, you'll have problems at higher speeds. The piston has to go up. It's operated by vacuum, so it can't catch. Okay, and there's a little screw that holds it down. That's a special screw because it's got it's got a cutout on it. And we'll put the return spring there for the accelerator pump. Now we're going to put the pin into the float here and put the float in there. And that's a retainer. That clip. It has to go so that the top of it just a little bit above the float bowl. So when the top goes on, it'll push down on it, give it a little pressure. And measure at the middle of the float to the top of the float bowl, and that's your measurement. Both sides have to be the same. Now to adjust it, take it out. Don't put any pressure on the needle where you'll have problems with flooding. Just bend the tab right there. That's all you have to do. Now if you have to, the floats aren't even with each other, bend it using the stems. Don't pull on the pontoons, they'll leak if you break the soldering joint. So there we go. We put the shield in there. That simply is a baffle. Keeps the gas from splattering around. We don't want it to. Now we're putting on the little spring that goes on the accelerator pump on this particular model. And this is going to control the air vent to the float bowl. So at a certain point it has to lift up that vent. So it's kind of hairy to get on there. So you may have to expand this a little bit on your computer to see it good, but there it is put on. Yeah, okay, and there's the delayer spring goes on top, and then we got the retainer for that. Holds it all together. Push it through there, and you put a little washer on there. That's actually part of the vent. And then our arm. In case I forget, put a little bit of white lithium grease on your accelerator pump cup if it's rubber. And if it happens to be leather, put 2 drops of oil. Just 2 drops, not too much. Gas doesn't have much lubrication these days, so you're gonna have to help it out a little. And so you got the float bowl gasket on there. Don't forget that. There's those two long screws I mentioned before. Now they go on there, holds it all together. All those bowl screws have lock washers. And you notice I already have the pull off on there, just two screws. It's pretty obvious where they go. Where it goes, I should say. And then you can see where the vacuum hooks up. And by the way, those vacuum hoses are measured on the inside. We do carry hoses, sell it by the foot. You want to tighten those bolt screws evenly across so you don't warp it. Okay, so there's a rod I hooked up to the accelerator pump arm. So use any clip. The clips in the our kits will work just fine. Cotter pins work if you have those. You can always put a washer between the like cotter pin and the arm to take up some of the slack. Especially good on carburetors that are older and worn. You don't want them too tight. You don't want them flopping around too much either. Okay, now we're going to make the pump adjustment. So look at your specs. This one goes in the second hole on the throttle, and then the outer hole on the arm itself. So your specs, it depends on the vehicle you have. So go by that. Okay, this is a Type 2 pump adjustment. This is the specs for this. Again, it'll tell you which holes to put the rod in. We're going to measure the distance from the top of the bowl, from the top to the washer there. That's the vent. So that'll be with the idle screw is turned out on this one, so it's not touching. Now, in some models, you have to set it to the proper idle before you do this measurement. So what you're looking for is how far, when you open up that throttle, how far that vent comes up off the top of the carburetor. And here we're going to do the link cam adjustment. We're going to put the idle screw touching the fast idle cam on the second step. Hold it there, close that choke valve, and measure distance between the choke valve and the carburetor wall. Okay, we'll do the pull-off adjustment now. And the first thing you want to do is hold in the stem on the pull-off, push it all the way in and hold it there, or you can put a vacuum gauge on it to hold it closed. And then hold the choke valve closed again and measure that gap as we've been doing. Look at your spec sheet and bending the rod right here, that little U shape, you bend it, open it up or close it, depending on which way you got to go. So now the unloader adjustment. You hold the throttle all the way open and again measure that gap, and if you have to adjust it using the unloader, the tang, you bend the Okay, that's it for putting together this BBD carburetor. If you get parts for this at mikescarb.com, mikescarb.com. And we do thank you for watching this.